Who is fraudster? In the criminological literature, the question about who is fraudster is a long-standing debate. It's not merely the definition suggesting that fraudster is perceived as someone who is greedy and deceitful by nature. This is far too simple because there is considerable ambiguity with authors and practitioners having a range of views. Some may argue that a fraud can be differentiated by the low and high social status of fraudster. This argument fundamentally arises as reactions from denial that fraud is not driven by biological, psychological, or even social pathological aspect. Rather, this is justified action, serving manifestations of dilemmas in the choice whether the action involved was a more or less acceptable behavior and how it can be explained. The foundation of fraud theory, the well-established fraud triangle, is inspired by the work of the sociologist Edwin Sutherland, who is the first time introduced the term white collar crime. Sutherland introduced his work entitled White Collar Criminality in his presidential address to the American Sociological Association at Philadelphia. The paper is concerned with the crime relating to economic and business activity, especially in the course of law-breaking by a person who are in the position of power. The Sutherland concept emphasizes the exceptions to the generality of the root cause of criminality. Sutherland acknowledged that white-collar crime is not incidental. While Sutherland concept has received considerable attention in the criminological literature, some scholars try to examine and credit the application of casual factors of white-collar crime, as explained by Sutherland. Hirschi and Goodferson, for example, their work is one of important contribution to the subject of a long-standing debate. Hirschi and Goodferson strongly argue intrinsically, the character of white-collar crime is similar to other crime. There is no special distinctions among the common and white-collar crime. In other words, no matter whether those who commit the crime are rich and powerful, all of crime are just manifestations of individual failure to regulate self-social control or the absence of self-control. It seems to me the generalization as explained by Goodferson and Hirschi a presence of reclaiming knowledge about the crime causations, because the causes of a crime are complex and still problematic. It is conceptually wrong, I think, to rely on the generalization to explain why a person commits crime. Bear in mind there are dissimilarities between the physical violence and non-physical violence. They have their own distinct characteristics. For example, we cannot generalize embezzlements, corruption, murder, robbery, and rape as one unit analysis. Not all instances of the general theory of crime fit in those crime categories. It is rational if a crime categorized as physical violence is caused by self-control failure. For another category, however, people are encouraged to make careful calculations about the probabilities and contingencies. Many influences are beyond the exercise of self-control that encourage people to commit crime. For the sake of simplicity in this topic, to understand what does a typical fraudster look like, it is gonna be good to consider the general studies carried out by professional organizations. For example, Association Certified Fraud Examiner, ACFE, KPMG, PwC. Why? Because they are anti-fraud professional. They are more experienced in working with the latest fraud trends and are more up-to-date using a broad range of information about the fraud perpetrators. Even though in this context I mention simplicity, it doesn't mean it will not engage in scholarly debate. I will give another example. It is from the concept of white collar crime. Sutherland, I think, does not mention what is the kind of offense can be said as a white collar crime. Even though Sutherland have already mentioned a person of respectability and high social status in the course of his occupation to define white collar crime, I think it is still problematic. I mean, such a definition is not representative for covering the population of white collar crime. I will give a simple logic in this point. There is staff, for example, there is staff working in pharmacy, for example. His routine activity is just to formulate the drug ingredients. However, let's say in the certain situation, the manager said, "Can you make our pharmacy profit or more profit?" And the manager asked to press the expense, for example. As an alternative, the staff tried to change the ingredient for the certain drugs. The consequence of these simple actions, can endanger human life. So, do we think this is just simple case? I don't think so. This is a very, very dangerous crime, and I can argue this can be categorized as white collar crime. The thing that I want to say is, if the definitions of white collar crime is based on offender status, is still problematic. So I suggest it will be better if it is based on offense, because it's more acceptable to define white collar crime, because there is no guarantee that a crime committed by people who have high social status can result in significant negative impact on society.